Hi everyone, this is SAT vocabulary list number 7. Please take notes of these words and definitions and anything I say that will help you remember them. The first word is superfluous, and superfluous is an adjective, which means a describing word, and it means or describes something that is more than enough, more than sufficient, or more than is required. It's synonymous with excessive, unnecessary, and needless. So thinking about having way too much of something or much more of something than you actually need. I use this word in our classroom all the time when I ask you to remove the superfluous materials off of your desk. So that's the extra stuff. So most of the time in class, all you need is pen and paper or your mobile device and your paper and pen. But a lot of times you have all kinds of things littering your desk that are unnecessary, that actually cause distraction and get in the way. So those are the superfluous things that I'm always asking you to clean off of your desk so you can really stay focused on the task at hand. The second word is annihilate, and to annihilate is a verb. It means to destroy absolutely, to destroy completely, every single part to destroy. So when I think of that, I think of a bomb, an explosion that kills maybe tons of people or levels an entire, area, and that would be, you would annihilate a town or part of a country if you dropped a big bomb on it. Third word is castigate, and castigate is a verb, and it means to punish. So whenever you're punishing someone, you could say that you are castigating them. So I have a picture here of a young child, clearly not happy because her mother is, it seems like she's getting a little lecture, or she's getting punished, or she's getting, she's being castigated for some maybe behavior that was not okay. 4 is deviate, and deviate is a verb, and it means to take a different course, to go away from a planned course of action. So if you deviate, you go away from, you move away from something. So there's different choices we all make in life. And so a lot of us, maybe our parents have a particular vision for what they want us to do in our lives. Maybe your parents are both doctors and they really want you to be a doctor after you finish high school and go to college, but you don't want to be a doctor. So maybe you want to go into acting or theater, or you want to be a writer, or you want to be a teacher. You may deviate from the plan that your parents have for your future and actually choose your own road and go your own direction and deviate from what everybody else wants you to do or thinks you should do. And this is actually related to the word deviant, which is a noun. And think of a person who is deviant. They kind of go in their own direction. And sometimes there's actually negative connotations around that as well. The next word is fastidious. And someone who is described as fastidious is very hard to please. And so this is a describing word, and a fastidious person probably has very high expectations for themselves, and that's why they can be very hard for other people to please, because they expect, sometimes they expect perfection. So if I work really hard to accomplish tasks, and then someone gives me something as a teacher, they hand in an assignment that doesn't look like they spent much time or energy or put much effort into it, I'm going to be disappointed, because in some ways I can be very fastidious. And here's a picture of a gentleman with his clippers out, making sure his grass is perfect. And I would not want to be this gentleman's gardener or landscaper, because he clearly looks like he would be very fastidious. Pliable, something that is described as pliable is easily bent or flexible. And so one good example is probably just to think about the different kinds of plastic that you encounter in your life. And some plastic is very, very hard, and it doesn't bend, or if you really try to bend it, you'll probably break it because it's not pliable. It's not the flexible kind of plastic. But there are some plastics that are much more bendable, much more pliable and flexible. And then as a good example, just a visual, people can also be kind of pliable and flexible, right? So here's a gymnast having no trouble doing the splits and also seeming to like bend over backwards. So just a visual to kind of keep pliable in your mind. 7 is jovial, and I think that this word sounds happy. I think it's an easy word to remember because it describes somebody who's very merry, good temperament, good disposition. You know, we have people in our lives who are very jovial, who just always tend to be in a really good mood and try to, you know, kind of take life as a gift, and they're pretty happy people. And for some reason, when I think of jovial, I think of like an older man who's just kind of like maybe like a Santa Claus figure, just very happy, like ho ho ho, isn't life good? So maybe that will help you remember it. And these two girls are laughing, and they seem very jovial as well. So I thought that would be a good example to kind of remember that jovial is a really positive word. It means very merry and happy. On the other end of the spectrum, a more negative word. So mutilate is a verb, and it means to disfigure. Mutilate means to disfigure. And a lot of times when we think of mutilation, we think of like bodily mutilation, where somebody is either born or disfigured, they're born disfigured, or maybe something happens to them, they're in a tragic accident, and they're somehow disfigured. But I didn't want to choose a really heavy photograph. Instead, I chose this photograph of this birthday cake that has been mutilated and destroyed, right? So not only can it be a human body that's mutilated, but it could be something like a cake. It could be maybe a beautiful work of art. Somebody has come and mutilated it out of like anger. So thinking about mutilation as, you know, to really just disfigure, to almost destroy the appearance of. Number 9 is persist, and this is a verb, and it means to continue, to push forward, and usually it says continue steadfast against opposition. So it's when you move forward, when you continue working at something, when you continue pursuing something, even when you face opposition. So a person who is persistent, and this is the adjective form of this word, is very, you know, they have a lot of drive and they continue to work in the face of opposition. So here's an example of someone who looks like that maybe he's climbed a very big mountain. He's very happy and excited, probably quite proud of himself, and he probably had to persist in this journey up this mountain, right? It wasn't easy. There was opposition. Maybe it was tiring, or it was exhausting, or cold, or whatever the opposition was, whatever the challenge is, and yet he kept going. 10 is regenerate, and to regenerate is to reproduce or regrow, or to kind of heal in terms of your cells regenerating. And this is a verb. And whenever I think of the word regenerating, to reproduce, to grow back, I think of when I was a child. And in my first home, my family had all around the property was ivy. And in the ivy were lizards. And we had 2 cats at the time. And the cats' favorite activity was to corner these lizards and bite their tails off. It sounds horrible, but they did it all the time. So there's all these lizards that had no tails running around like the property. And I noticed these big adult lizards, some of them had itty-bitty tails. And my dad explained to me that their tails are able to grow back. And so lizards have tails that are able to regenerate, to kind of grow back, to regenerate. And so this is an interesting example of an animal that can lose part of its body and yet regrow it. I've heard that starfish are the same way, that if they lose a section of their body, as long as they have part of the center of their body still there, they can regenerate. 11 is scholastic, and scholastic describes anything pertaining to, related to education or schools. And so I know that there's actually a company called Scholastic that publishes all kinds of education materials. And they chose their name because Scholastic describes things that are related to, pertaining to schools and education, right? So just thinking about school, thinking about academics, think about the word scholastic. 12 is to subside, and to subside is a verb, and it means to relapse into a state of repose and tranquility. So this is kind of a challenging definition. So relapse, to think of returning to a condition where you're relaxed, you're calm, life is tranquil. So maybe there's been something kind of horrible that's happened. Maybe it's a big fire or, a natural disaster where there's been a lot of chaos and people, kind of their homes have been destroyed and the weather's been horrible. But then after that, after the storm passes, after the fire's been put out, things tend to subside. And there's, if it's a big tragedy, then you have a lot of cleanup and things to deal with afterwards. But eventually life kind of returns to hopefully a state of kind of a normal state, normalcy. And so again, you kind of return to the state of repose, a state of tranquility, of calm. 13 is translucent, and it describes anything that allows the passage of light. The antonym for translucent would be opaque, and something that's opaque is very dark. It does not allow light through. But translucent, something that's translucent allows light to filter through it. So there's some cloth that is very light colored and, very thin that would, if you held it up to the sun would still come through, right? It's very translucent. And I like this picture because this leaf is very translucent. It almost looks like it's glowing, allowing the light to pass through. Visage, I've heard this word said both ways, kind of tomato, tomato, refers to the face. And a lot of times in old literature or literature written a long time ago, I know that Jane Austen novels always talk about a person's visage, their face, their countenance, the look of them. So just think of it as kind of synonymous with face. And here's a cute face that I thought might help you remember visage. And the last word is cunning, and cunning is really a person who is very shrewd, very sly, able to deceive others. And so the definition says skill employed in a shrewd or sly manner, as in deceiving. Again, another SAT vocabulary definition that is challenging to understand. So really think of cunning as the skill. So a skill that makes or that allows a person, when employed or when used, to be very sly, to be kind of deceptive. And so someone who's cunning tends to be very kind of have a lot of wits about them, a lot of intelligence, because they're able to kind of plan and be very sly in the way in which they interact with others, or they say in this example, they're able to kind of deceive other people. So here's an example of someone who looks very cunning, like he's got something up his sleeve that he may be planning, and it doesn't look like it's probably a good thing. So that's our SAT vocabulary list for list number 7.